Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm Seth Udinsky. Well, back in the beginning of the United States, there were very few black preachers filling the pulpits of churches across the country and in the colonies as well. Now, although the church has always historically stood on the front lines against slavery, both in the United States and elsewhere, by the way, in this particular time period, there simply were not many, if any, black pastors in America. But in the later 18th century, as the nation was beginning its life, a man arose to the spiritual forefront in the cradle of liberty, Philadelphia, to become really the first great black pastor in America, Reverend Absalom Jones. Now, Reverend Jones was born into slavery in Delaware in 1746, and keep this in mind, this was far back enough in history that slavery was still legal throughout much of the colonies. His owner brought the young Jones with him to Philadelphia, where he would remain and he would make his mark in history for the rest of his life. Now, Jones actually married while he was still in slavery in the 1770s. He managed to buy freedom for his wife and children first before he himself became free also in 1784. That same year, he got involved in the ministerial work of St. George's Methodist Episcopal Church in Philadelphia. His pastoral career had begun, and alongside his work as a shepherd, he also worked to find freedom for other slaves as an abolitionist. Now, in 1792, Jones and other black parishioners were prohibited from sitting with the white members of the congregation. Now, this really was the catalyst that caused Jones and others in his congregation to found the First African Church of Philadelphia. Now, joining a prominent Protestant denomination was the next key step for the survival of this young church, and Jones succeeded in leading First African to join the Episcopal Church. Now, keep in mind, in history, at its core and at this time in history as well, the Episcopal Church was just the American version of the Anglican Church in England. Now, in 1794, First African Church of Philadelphia held its first services, renamed as the African Episcopal Church of St. Thomas. It took several more years for Jones to be ordained, but when he finally was, in the year 1802, he became the first official ordained African-American pastor in the history of the United States. Now, for the remaining decade and a half or so of his life, Jones would serve faithfully as pastor of this church, and he would also remain at the forefront of the abolitionist movement. Now, his influence would actually result in freedom for many slaves. Jones himself died in the year 1818. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History.